Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something I find absolutely fascinating, the journey from messy, unpredictable human data to a rock-solid software blueprint. If you've ever found yourself wondering how in the world we take scattered feedback, random brainstorming ideas, and a dozen different user opinions, and actually turn all of that into a functional product you can click and use, well, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to see firsthand how all that noisy data gets transformed into elegant design.
But first, we really have to start with what might be the single most important question in all of tech. How do we avoid the incredibly expensive, utterly heartbreaking disaster of building a product that literally nobody wants? Think about it. You can have the most brilliant developers on the planet writing the absolute cleanest code, but if they're building the wrong thing, it's just a massive waste of time and money. The secret here isn't writing better code at all. It's about validating what we're building way before the coding even starts. Okay, let's dive into this. The ultimate solution to that problem is prototyping. If we look at the official IEEE definition, they call it an early partial implementation of a proposed system, used to gather feedback and validate requirements. Now, the absolute key takeaway to remember here is that a prototype is definitely not the final product, not even close. It's a strategic mock-up. It's our ultimate safety net to make sure we're actually on the right track before we commit to full-scale, expensive development. What's really cool about prototyping is that it basically boils down to a super simple formula. It's a communication tool plus a requirement validation tool. By putting a tangible, visual model in front of everyday users and developers, we instantly clarify all those fuzzy, unclear requirements. We catch errors incredibly early, we keep costs way down, and we validate our core ideas. It's the perfect bridge between what the user is picturing in their head and what the developer is gearing up to build. Now, these prototypes usually come in two totally different flavors. On the low-fidelity side, we're talking about paper, pencils, sticky notes, maybe a whiteboard. They are insanely fast, practically free, and super easy to scrap and start over. That makes them absolutely perfect for early-stage brainstorming when your ideas are still really fluid. Then on the high-fidelity side, we've got interactive, digital designs that look and act just like the real deal. They give you a much more realistic experience, but naturally, they take way more time and money to create. So you really want to save those for the later stages of planning. And when you do finally need to step up to those high-fidelity prototypes, usually because you need to get that final green light from stakeholders who want to know exactly what they're paying for, there are some heavy-hitting industry tools for that. We're talking Figma, Adobe XD, Sketch, or even just building it out in basic HTML and CSS. These tools are amazing because they let you build highly interactive interfaces where users can actually click around and feel the software, all before a single line of backend logic is written. But wait, before we can draw anything, whether it's on a napkin at a coffee shop or perfectly aligned in Figma, we need inputs. We need to know what the user actually wants. And that whole process begins with the user story. The classic industry format goes exactly like this. As a specific role, I want a goal so that I get a benefit. This is the foundational building block for any prototype. It strictly forces us to view the entire system through the user's eyes, capturing their actual needs instead of just guessing based on our own assumptions. It's honestly fascinating to see how directly these stories translate into actual design elements. Let's look at a real-world example from an AI interview room system. The story is, as a student, I want to upload my CV before the interview so that the system can evaluate my qualifications. Because we have this one specific sentence, we know for a fact that our registration screen absolutely must have a file upload button, it needs PDF validation, and it needs a way to trigger an automatic analysis. The human story literally dictates the digital architecture. And the system just keeps growing as we bring in different viewpoints. Let's look at the administrator's perspective. As an admin, I want to view every candidate's interview score so that I can compare applicants. Instantly, this tells our design team, hey, we can't just build a portal for the students. We have to prototype a completely separate admin dashboard specifically tailored for sorting, comparing, and ranking scores. Every single new perspective adds a vital piece to the overall puzzle. Now, user stories are an amazing starting point, but sometimes you really have to dig a bit deeper. And that brings us to interviews. You can kind of think of interviews like a mini detective story, whether they're highly structured with a rigid list of questions or just completely unstructured, free-flowing conversations. These face-to-face interactions are pure gold. They let us extract incredibly rich details, clear up any immediate confusion, and most importantly, ask those vital follow-up questions that a simple web form would completely miss. And it's during these conversations where the real magic happens. For example, during one session, recruiters told the design team, look, we don't just want written answers. We really need to observe the candidate's communication skills. That right there is a massive aha moment. Without that specific chat, the prototype might have completely missed the mark and just offered a text-based questionnaire. Instead, that feedback directly generated a hard requirement for an AI interviewer that actually uses a webcam and voice interaction. Here's another incredible insight that came straight from a one-on-one interview. Hiring managers pointed out that, sure, technical candidates definitely need a live coding test, but HR candidates absolutely shouldn't have to take one. Think about that for a second. If we hadn't sat down and asked, we might have forced a brutal coding test onto every single applicant, completely ruining the experience for non-technical folks. Because we listened, we were able to map out a conditional logic feature right into the prototype. And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when we take our data collection and scale it way up using surveys. Surveys are how we reach a huge audience to gather that hard quantitative data. When hundreds of users were asked about their preferred interview format, a massive 72% chose voice. Text, chat, and video only were left completely in the dust. So this hard data forcefully decided the direction for us. The AI absolutely had to be voice-based as its main interaction method. The numbers made the call. Surveys are also an absolute lifesaver for prioritizing features, especially when your budget and your timeline are super tight, which, let's be real, is pretty much always the case in software development. Look at this feedback. 81% of users wanted a highly detailed score breakdown, compared to just 19% who were fine with a simple pass or fail. This gives our prototyping team crystal clear direction on where to spend those precious, expensive, high-fidelity design hours. A simple pass/fail screen just isn't going to cut it for this crowd. We have to build that complex scoring dashboard. While surveys are fantastic for broad, overarching metrics, we also rely heavily on questionnaires. These are standard written sets of questions, sent out online, via email, or even on paper, that help us collect requirements without needing any real-time human interaction. They are incredibly fast to blast out to a user base and very low cost to analyze. But you do have to be a little careful here. Since there's no detective in the room to guide the conversation, users might misinterpret a question, and we can't exactly clarify things for them on the fly. Despite that limitation, questionnaires are incredibly powerful for validating the ideas we've already brainstormed. Remember our very first user story about the student who wanted to upload their CV? We took that specific concept, pushed it out via a questionnaire, and boom, 88% of respondents agreed, saying, yes, candidates absolutely should upload their CV before the interview. That massive wave of validation securely locked the Upload CV button into our final high-fidelity prototype. It evolved from just one person's story into a total community consensus. But honestly, here is where this data collection gets really, truly powerful. It can literally save you from making massive, expensive mistakes. When users were asked if industry candidates should see their interview scores immediately, 76% actively voted no. Think about how huge that is. The users actively voted against adding a feature. By catching this early, the team completely avoided spending weeks prototyping, designing, and coding an immediate reveal feature that nobody actually wanted. So, let's connect all these dots and take a look at the big picture of this entire lifecycle. We always start with elicitation. That's gathering those messy human stories, playing detective in interviews, and sending out the surveys and questionnaires. Next up, we move to requirement specification, where we turn all that qualitative noise into traceable, testable rules. And finally, we arrive at prototyping and validation. This is where we build out our visual blueprint to make 100% sure we nailed it, long before the expensive coding actually begins. And so, we find ourselves right back where we started, but this time, we're armed with a seriously powerful toolkit. Every single successful feature in a software product can be traced directly back to a conversation, a survey data point, or a human story. By validating those inputs visually, we save months of time, we save countless dollars, and most importantly, we actually build things people are excited to use. So I'll leave you with this one thought. What hidden requirements or massive potential disasters is your next prototype going to reveal before it's too late? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you in the next one.